Republicans in the U.S. are reworking their playbook for the 2022 midterms after a strong showing in Tuesday's election. Republican Glenn Youngkin defeated former Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe in the state's hotly contested gubernatorial race. Youngkin gained significant support with Virginia's suburban voters in the final weeks of the election. The governor-elect rallied his base by focusing on wedge issues ahead of Election Day. The strategy has politicians on both sides of the aisle taking notice. Jeff Rode joins us now to talk more about this. He is the founder of the Republican campaign firm, Axiom Strategies, and the chief strategist for Glenn Youngkin's successful gubernatorial campaign in Virginia. Jeff, thank you for joining us. So Glenn Youngkin is a career politician. Tell us what part of your strategy proved most crucial to him winning this race?
I think Glenn Youngkin campaigned all across the Commonwealth, and he took no vote for granted. He competed where Republicans typically don't compete. He went after Asian American voters. He went after African American voters and Hispanic voters, and it paid off on election night. He won over 50% of the Hispanic vote. He won over 55% of the Asian American vote, and he got over 25% of the African American vote. And so he took issues that people actually cared about, be it education, safety, taxes, cost of living, those type of issues that people wake up and go to bed dealing with every single day. And we were running against a candidate that just spent his whole time talking about national issues and former presidents and things, just talking past voters. And I think that was the key to the success. Campaign for every vote, making sure that no one was left behind and everyone had something to grab a hold of as part of our message.
Those demographic wins are certainly significant, as were your wins among independent and suburban voters. By contrast, President Biden won Virginia by a 10-point margin in 2020. We're talking about just a year later. Beyond just sort of the universal truths of campaign for every vote, don't take any vote for granted, and all politics are local. How did your campaign flip the state just 1 year later?
Well, the credit goes to the candidate. He's a generational talent and does a great job. But I will also say the Democrats did play into our favor. What took the Republicans 10 years to really lose the suburbs in a big way, talking past voters, not talking about issues that they actually care about, the Democrats have actually done that in 10 months. And their radical progressive left has really taken over their party. Nancy Pelosi now looks like a moderate Democrat. I never thought I'd be old enough to see that day come. And so Joe Biden, and with his extreme unpopularity, has really driven the Democrat Party left with the progressive movement within the party. But this campaign was about Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin. Obviously, the atmosphere helped and the environment helped that Biden and the National Democrats had gone so far left so fast. And the Democrats in Richmond, who have just been in charge, just a few short years, did the same thing. So they were hearing the same drumbeat in Washington, where a third of their voters, it's local news. And then the other 2/3 were hearing the same thing from Richmond. And so one party control, a progressive left agenda that's just taken over and out of control, they needed somebody that was sensible and common sense to come in and put the brakes on and get the Commonwealth back on track, and Glenn fit that bill.
So, Jeff, you say that your campaign really talked about issues of importance to folks. Governor-elect Youngkin said during the campaign he made a big point about banning critical race theory in Virginia classrooms. But in some ways, that actually isn't an issue for folks there in Virginia because critical race theory is not part of the public school curriculum. Do GOP strategists plan to use wedge issues like that in the midterms? Is that an effective strategy?
Well, education, first of all, the curriculum of public school education, Terry McAuliffe said he didn't want any parental involvement. And that was a key moment in the campaign. It came in the second debate on September 28th. When you break down education, there's really 4 different factors. There's critical race theory, which is absolutely part of the curriculum that's being taught at the state level. In fact, when Terry McAuliffe was governor, he introduced that concept and was given to teachers. They call it different things in different places, but it's absolutely a fundamental theory of education. and it's not taught all across the Commonwealth. There's select campuses and school boards that have implemented it. They paid $50,000 to have it taught to teachers on how to teach it. So that's a misnomer. But there's also school choice. Some parents want school choice. Some parents don't want the school resource officer, which is the school board effect of defund the police. They've literally removed school resource officers from big mega schools and taken them out. And then bad things have happened. Violence has happened. Sexual assaults have happened, covered up. And then other folks have really focused on advanced math and science. And they've dumbed down those curriculums to allow a more, instead of pushing students to high achieve, they've lowered the standards. And so those four groups between CRT and school resource officers and school choice and advanced math and science, those are four disparate groups of people and what they think about education. Education as a topic is what we ran on. And education is a subject
right.
in our opposition.
They were certainly all pulled together, as you say, when Terry McAuliffe handed you essentially a great talking point, as you point out during the debate, by arguing that parents need to step back from their kids' education, which I think even for Democratic voters is something that had many scratching their heads. How would you have advised Terry McAuliffe to run his campaign if you had been in charge?
Well, that's a difficult question. I'm going to focus on the Republican side. But I think what Terry did is he spent 57% of his advertising dollars trying to say that we're Donald Trump. And he spent all of his campaign talking about a candidate that wasn't on the ballot, talking about issues that nobody cared about or that they weren't focused on. And I just think in a governor's race, that's maybe an effective strategy for a U.S. Senate race. But I think looking backwards is what people are kind of tired of. And Terry was the modern political boss of the Democrat Party. He was a Clintonista coming out of the Clinton years. And that looking back, I think voters are just kind of tired of it. They want a new vision. They want to look forward. They want to be hopeful and optimistic. And Glenn Youngkin was just a vessel for rejecting the past, rejecting the fights and the negativity that's been going on in politics for decades that Terry represented, versus a clean, hopeful, opportunistic view of the future. And I think that's why they elected him last Tuesday.
So, Jeff, I want to end by talking about this a little bit because, as you mentioned, former President Trump and the Democrats' attempts to try and tie your Youngkin campaign to the former president really being unsuccessful there. It's interesting when we look at the Democrats bringing in all of the big party leaders and Youngkin really keeping its distance from former President Trump and really campaigning on his own. Do you think that other Republicans, particularly in purple states, will be following your lead on that and seeing that as an effective strategy?
Well, I hope that what candidates take away from the Youngkin model is that you need to build your own brand and not require someone else to help you get elected. Of course, the president who actually campaigned on our behalf was helpful in our election as well and motivating some of his voters the Monday before the election. But Glenn had his own brand. He invested in his own communication about what he wanted, the vision for the future of the Commonwealth. And nobody likes a knockoff. And there's never going to be another President Obama. There's never going to be another President Trump. And for these candidates to try and run a campaign based on a knockoff version of the previous, it just never works. Nobody likes one. They don't work as well. They don't tell, if it's a watch, they don't tell time as well. But more importantly, they're just not authentic. And I think every candidate, a voter has a perception of what they will bring to them and what they're going to get from that candidate, and seeing them through the eyes of another candidate, I don't think ever works. So I hope it's a model. I hope that candidates reinvest in themselves instead of just running negative advertising, run positive about themselves and their vision for the future.
Jeff Rowe, so interesting speaking with you. Congratulations on your electoral win. Thanks.
Thank you so much.